Mac is back. We had a fun little couple of weeks of controversy that appear to be squashed once and for all. Now, what's interesting about this whole thing is we talked about this heading into last week, and we haven't gotten a chance to talk since, Taylor. Is there any world in which Bailey Zappe might be better for the Patriots than Mac Jones? And everything that you'd seen, the answer was no. And then last week happened, and he did a bunch of things we hadn't really seen him do before. His presence in the pocket was a lot better than what we'd seen. He made some really quality throws. Obviously, the Patriots are trying to make things easier on him, and the Pats put up points, and it was largely on him to do so because the running game wasn't working as well as they thought it would work against the Browns' really, subpar rush defense. And he was amazing. And on we go. Is it a controversy? Belichick still refusing to say, when Mac's back, he's my guy. So people's wheels are spinning, but the reports are now it's Mac. If Mac's healthy, he plays. And it's really never been that big of a consideration in New England. I still don't understand why Belichick wouldn't have just squashed it. He did with Cam Newton repeatedly when asked if he was going to move on from him. Cam's our quarterback, Cam's our quarterback, Cam's our quarterback. I don't really get what's going on there, but one way or the other, we'll dissect the games being played there, but you think it's the right football decision, obviously, right?
Absolutely. And then if there's any world where Zappe were to usurp Mac, it would be if the turnover problem continues. And I think if there's any reason that Belichick wouldn't flat out say it's Mac, one, I think there's a bit of an advantage in not just telling teams what they're doing. But on top of that, Mac wasn't a flawless, passer either. We know there was at least one or two plays a game where he was putting the ball in harm's way. Part of that was wanting to be more aggressive and go downfield. But there was also part of it where just dude, these are bad decisions. Point blank, period. You can't be making these. So I think that may be part of the reason, again, and just not wanting to necessarily show your hand. But I don't think anybody who's really watching is going to tell you that, no, Zappe is the guy. Because the scheme's completely different. I did a whole breakdown for Next Gen Stats where I compared how they're being used. Zappe's getting more blockers. He's getting more play action. He's getting more screens. He's getting more separation because he's got Jacoby healthy now. Hunter Henry is now kind of starting to catch his stride. He's looking better at the receiving game. And the play action's been working wonders. Whereas Mac was passing when teams knew he was going to pass the vast majority of the time, which upped the difficulty and an offense that was already trying to find its identity.
Well, wouldn't that be the Pats failing Mac then rather than him, why put him in positions where he can make more mistakes, where he isn't playing to his strengths?
I think there's a case to be made for sure. And I think that we will see more play action and some easier opportunities for Mac. But I think that last year, especially the games against the Bills, what my perception of them just coming out and being we're going to go downfield like Mac did at Bama, is they want to be able to get into those shootouts with Josh Allen when they need to, because they're going to be playing them at least twice a year for the foreseeable future. So you want to have the capability of being all right, we're going gun and we're throwing. How even with Brady, the Patriots most of the time against a lot of teams, especially if they were vulnerable to the run, they would try, pound the rock, see if it works, play action. But then you have Brady. So then when that doesn't work and the game gets out of hand, then you can have Brady just drop back 30, 40 times a game, and he can take care of you, make the throws that are there. And I think that's what the Patriots are trying to see how much they can do with Mac. Because, again, beginning of the season is extended preseason. But now you're at an interesting point where, okay, Mac had his 3 games, but, the offense looks way better when you went back to what you did last year, where Mac also thrived. So how much do you want to give him the opportunity to go downfield in more obvious situations like you were doing before? And how much are you going to say, you know what, maybe we should go back to what we were doing last season because this offense is really starting to catch its stride. Hunter Henry in his second year, Jacoby Myers breaking out. There's plenty of reasons to say, okay, this last year's version of the offense with this version of the personnel could look a whole lot different and more explosive. So that's the interesting thing is where's that balance going to be?
Zappe impressed you a little though, right? More so than at least when we discussed it the week prior.
I think he's missing still. And again, it's so nitpicky because he's not doing, I don't want to say he's doing the wrong thing. It's just, he could do things better. The ball placement could be better, especially when he's throwing a wide open receivers, just to maximize yards.
Get him on the run. Yeah.
Right. There's also times downfield where he just doesn't, it feels like he doesn't want to risk it. and kind of goes downfield. And sometimes I think he's definitely leaving some meat on the bone. But at the same time, we were saying that about Mac last year. So I hate saying it as a gripe against me. You're just talking about a situation where you have a first rounder last year who's in his second season and a fourth round rookie who's doing well with what he's supposed to be doing.
And that's the thing. I totally agree with you. That's what's interesting to me is that I don't believe that Zappe's the better quarterback, but I do believe that people were too quick to dismiss it and almost comparing him this year to where Mac is this year, as opposed to seeing after 3 games, did they ask him to do as much, as little, or less than they asked Mac to do through his first couple of starts last year? Is it actually impressive that how much he was able to handle in such a short period of time? And what, if anything, what's his trajectory? Is it something higher than what we possibly considered? I'm not saying it's the case. I was just open to the possibility because, again, you don't know anything unless you know what Bill sees and what he thinks. And would it have been shocking? Kinda, but also I think it'd be well in line with, the type of thing that you would expect from Bill Belichick. What I think is going to happen, and this is part conspiracy theory, not conspiracy, this is partly unfounded. I don't believe Mac's actually 100% ready. And I believe that while all arrows are pointing to him playing, I actually think Zappe's going to play. That's just my prediction. It could be dead wrong. And if that happens, but Mac dresses and he's there in a break glass in case of emergency, it's going to give off a vibe that Zappe started instead of Mac, and then all hell is going to break loose, especially if he plays a good game. So I am interested to see, is there a world in which Mac dresses and doesn't start because he's not quite all the way there yet? And I wouldn't be shocked to see it. I was looking at practice footage from Friday. He still has a hitch in his step. He was cutting, so to speak, but it's not decisive. I actually think he's probably still in a perfect world 1 to 2 weeks away. And the smart move might actually be, if you think you can get by this Bears team, which I think they can, with Zappe, to actually hold off a little bit longer. That's just my opinion. But I think if that happens, I think they're hurting themselves. I think the subterfuge could be hurting them, because the longer you play this out and make it seem like Mac's close and then have him not play, people are going to keep thinking there's something weird going on.
That's for sure. And, I think
when there might not be at all. But again, the longer Zappe, if Zappe goes up and takes another leap right before your eyes, each minute, each snap he takes complicates things potentially, even if their mind was made up last week and maybe a little less made up this week and maybe a little less after one more week. The longer it goes on, the worse it gets for Mac, unless, of course, Zappe totally lays an egg.
True, but we're also thinking about this from an outside perspective, and we know that Belichick doesn't think that way. Like, there could be a hurricane outside, and
he might like what he sees the more he sees it. That's all I'm saying.
Right, but I mean, at the same time, I still think that, and again, what Zappe's done, I guess, could inspire more confidence if you had to stick with him. But I think the biggest tell is the fact they never put Mac on injured reserve, which would have been 4-week period. So they thought that maybe he'd be able to play after, 2-3 weeks and then 4. Now we're approaching that point of like, okay, if he's healthy, he is going to play. And again, I understand that Bailey has definitely inspired confidence. He's kept the offense on schedule, which frankly is more than, I don't want to just say Mac, because it wasn't just Mac. There were a lot of false starts, pre-snap penalties and errors that were putting them behind the chains, where it wasn't all on Mac, even though he was making some poor decisions. But under Zappe, it's also, to be fair, last week, a ton of really bad unforced errors as well. So that was kind of the thing with Bailey in his first start, where it's, like the offense is really smooth. And then we started to see flashes of, okay, yes, but things are still, there's that underlying issue of the Patriots getting in their own way. So, again, if Mac were to struggle when he's healthy enough to play, I think that, yeah, all right, you have to have a conversation. Because if he's screwing the team, then you have to go to the guy that was doing a lot of good things and was way ahead of where I think anybody expected he would be. So, yeah, I think Mac, unless he kind of squanders it himself.
I think it's Mac without question once he's healthy. The longer it goes on, the trickier it could potentially get. And again, I do agree. I think if there is a leash on Mac, it's in terms of weeks, not, a game. It would have to be sustained play where they're not liking what they're seeing. But I believe it's his. I just believe it could be possible that it kicks down the road one more week, because I don't know that Mac is 100% healthy. We'll see what happens as far as that.